Welcome back, everybody. I am really excited. Again, I know you hear me say that often, but I'm really excited to speak to all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds. And in doing my prep on our next guest, Goya Robles, I got really fascinated because one of the first things that I saw him mention that I'm going to be asking Goya in a second about is that going to the actor studio was somewhat of a spiritual experience. As soon as I read that, I said, "Okay, that's my guy. I want to talk to Goya." So, welcome to the program, Goya Robles. Um,
Yeah, thanks.
thanks.
Thanks for having
No, it's my pleasure, and thanks for taking your time. I know this has been a long day of work for you, and you're making some time for me after it. I really appreciate it. So, when you said that, again, you kind of you went to the actors studio, which I've had three, I think, 3 or 4 guests on, 4 guests on from actors studio so far. All of them have been amazing, and thanks to Austin Bases, Austin, you rock. I love you, buddy, for introducing us. But when you in one of your interviews, you mentioned that it's kind of been somewhat of a spiritual experience. I want to dive into that. What was what you would define spiritual about taking acting classes and being there?
Well, um, I think it's twofold, at least for me.
Hmm.
When I auditioned for the Actor Studio Drama School, I was just looking for something to do more than what I was doing. I was working at the YMCA at the time, and it felt like a creative, fun thing to explore. But I learned really quick that I had taken on way more than I had anticipated. And the art form and the way that it was taught me was very much uh, training my senses, enlivening my senses in a way where when I use my imagination, it's more vivid. The smells are more potent, the, the tastes are more, and everything is just enlivened more. And then eventually it started going into like parts of my life, like you know it's in order to tell someone else's story, because that's what we're doing, right? We take these characters, in a sense we're acting as a channel for them to for that character to express its spirit, its psychology in our instrument. And so our job, I learned that it was my job to find a way to release any judgments or any tension that I may have in my body so that I can receive what's to come. And also which creates a deep empathy for the characters that I end up um, playing. But then the other thing is so many things that I had to encounter in these characters that were similar to things that I went through or would touch upon things that I went through in my past, and um, that centered around loss or abuse or so many different things. And so uh, between that and going to therapy and learning how to process all these things, it was a very spiritual journey for me because it was, I had to learn what it was like to heal myself through my craft. And it was not something unexpected. I was not going to acting school looking for a way to heal past trauma and things that have affected me. But it was just a gift to realize oh, now I have something in my life that I can practice that allows me to touch upon those things and heal uh, different things that have happened in my life through my work. So in that sense, I feel like it was a very spiritual it continues to be a very spiritual process.
Yeah, certainly is. And again, the way you put it of gaining more empathy for the people that you're playing, not having judgments on them, and acting as a channel for somebody else's experience. It is a very spiritual practice. You talk about your past, and I want to dive into that a little bit. I've heard you mention before that a lot of the people, that you grew up with, all of, I think you've mentioned, and I don't want to misquote, but it seemed to be that most of them thought that you would be in jail or you would be not alive at some point, and you're still here. Um, why is that, and how do you use that in order to be that channel for somebody else?
Well, there was a time when I was very angry, very very angry, and no one know what to do with me. You know, I started acting out when I was maybe like 13, 14 years old. You know, I came from a family like my father left when I was 3 years old, and my mom and my stepdad ended up raising me, and you know they they treated me the same way that their parents treated them, and like you know, when a kid is acting out, you punish them, and that was it. And um, so I used to get uh, beat a lot. I used to act out a lot, and they didn't really know what to do with me. And it wasn't until I got older and I started getting arrested a lot, and I was on the street a lot. And, I ended up facing some serious jail time. And my mom went bankrupt, um, paying for a lawyer to try to get me into like a juvenile facility. So I did. I got into a juvenile facility. I was there for like 16 months, and yeah, and so many people in my family and extended family thought that what was the point? I wasn't gonna get any better. The place that I was in for 16 months, there were staff members there who felt like I was just gonna be a smart criminal and nothing else, and so I dealt with people who just kind of looked at what was on the surface. They didn't really just saw that I was up to no good and acting out, but didn't really take the time to, I guess, investigate why. Um, and so uh, I think it was a challenge for me to even attempt to look at what I was angry about. To be honest, I didn't really start looking at what I was angry about until I went to grad school for acting.
Mhm.
I I knew that I didn't want to get locked up or have my freedom taken away after the 16 months in the juvenile facility, but that didn't mean I was processing how I felt or what had happened to me. You know, um, uh, yeah, it wasn't until I went to grad school that I started touching upon my father's absence since I was 3, touching upon all the different types of abuse that happened in the home,
Mhm.
and having to pretend like certain people didn't abuse me growing up, and having to see them at parties, and having to deal with denial and all these things, uh, which it's toll. And there was actually growing up, I was always obsessed with the number 24 and 27. And I don't know why. For some reason, those two numbers always popped up. And I never saw my life past them. And I always used to think by the time I was 24, I was going to be dead. That's what I believed as a kid. But funny enough, the age 24 and 27 were the 3 years that I went to acting school, where everything changed. It's funny how the young works like that sometimes.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. And I know our time is limited, and I know Austin is very upset at me right now that we're going to do a much shorter interview with you than we did with him or with Tim. But just the thought, and this is again me, sharing what I think. But there was a time in my life where I don't quite remember which birthday, but I didn't even plan the birthday. There was just something in me that said, "There's no point. I don't think I am, kind of making it there." And when I started, I'm a spiritual person. I believe in, in all sorts of things that the audience already knows, and is looking forward to fast forwarding this part. But for me, when I started kind of investigating later of what that is, I learned, again, whether you believe it or not is a different point, but I learned that, as we come into life, there are 3 exit points that we have kind of pre-planned. And then at some point, there is a decision that gets made at the soul level of whether we go or not. And I felt very clearly that was one of the potential exit points that I obviously did not take, but I felt it. I felt it with my gut. I don't know, if 24, 27 was potential exit point for you, but something to kind of think about. But it's very interesting that as you were talking about it, to me that's what rang out of, well, there was one road and you took a different road. And that time, was obviously a hugely productive and spiritual time for you. And I'm certainly happy that you did.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Okay, and going to Actors Studio, and I know that you've mentioned in actually every interview that I've seen you do, you mentioned just how big of an influence Elizabeth Camp was for you. And I know other actors, are referring to her as well. What was it with working with her that kind of clicked for you, and what was it that was so special?
She's like my mom. She was she just believed in every part of who I am. And she saw all the stuff that happened to me as a gift that I can tap into. And she taught me how to tap into it. And there was a fearlessness in the way that well, I don't maybe say fearless, but like just a deep sense of courage in the way that she instilled in all of us. Like, it's important to move through things and to use what happened to you as a way to give that to other people. And she I don't know, she just believed in me in a way where it never faltered. And at a time where I needed it most, you know. Right to this day, it's been 3 years since she's passed, and I deeply miss her. Deeply miss her. She was someone who just left a mark in my life, and it was through the work, through acting. And they say that I've heard certain people say that your passion is directly correlated to the person who introduced it to you. And
Yeah.
that's true, I completely understand why. Because Elizabeth was was just pure heart, pure soul, and just had an intuition, like a fierce intuition that made me show up and respect the work and be on time and take things seriously, take my craft and who I am seriously. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Molly, again, I'm glad you had that time with her and you had somebody in your life that believed in you to that level. It's incredibly important, regardless of what it is that we do, to have that. Yeah, it's sad that she's gone, but yeah, you could be that for somebody else. That may be a part of your journey. Um, you mentioned about passion and the person who introduced you to it, and immediately I thought of my dad. I'm a poet. I know you're a poet. We come from two different backgrounds. Where I grew up, all the poetry had to rhyme. It's the traditional kind of European poetic structures. So my dad taught me the rhyming game and poetry, and he's a poet, and all of the people around him were poets. And every party that I've was privy to when I was a child, everybody would always stand up and they would read their toasts in a poetic form. So the first thing that I remember that I wanted to do was do that. And to this day, I'm a poet, and there's you can trace that directly to my dad of why I'm so passionate about it. So I totally understand that part. Um, how did you get involved in your poetry?
Um, I mean, I started writing like just it really came from hip hop. I wrote a lot of just different verses, and I remember when I first started rhyming, I wrote this piece, wrote this verse, and I went up to my boy and recited it, and he goes, "That was garbage," and, and he goes, because it was, it was rhyming about like street shit, which I was becoming familiar with, and but he was just like, you gotta be better than that. You gotta rhyme better than that. And so I went back that week and I wrote some super political piece that when I recited it, it blew him away, and it was such a stark contrast from what I had originally uh, recited to him. And so then I realized, oh, I can. And then I just started rhyming all the time in front of friends and people on the street, like, all my peoples, and I would get all this encouragement. Um, so that was like the beginning of like my writing and performing, back in 90, between 96 and 1999, around there. And then in 2000, I was a freshman in college, and I think it was 2000. Yeah, then I started, I got introduced to Def Jam poetry, and
Mhm.
I watched like all of the episodes that would come out over and over again, all the different types of poets, and it inspired me to write this piece because at the time I was going through a breakup and I wrote something and people connected to it. And so that's kind of how it started. For a while, I used to go perform all over the place. My content used to be super socio-political commentary about stuff,
Yep.
which would do good with the crowd. But after a while, like I started using, I got into this area where I was just writing deep personal stuff for a few years. And during that time, I didn't perform at all because it was so personal that I didn't want to perform it. It was just too much. And so that's how And then I started performing that personal material once I started teaching it. Then when I started teaching it, teaching, I can't just, that's the thing about being a teacher, like you gotta get uncomfortable, and you gotta, all the areas that you're scared to enter, you don't want to teach them to be scared. You want to teach them how to own their voice. So, but that's when I started owning my own voice.
Yeah. I again doing political writing and doing political poetry. A lot of my poems are political, and as a spiritual person to spiritual person, what tore me up is that I had very strong opinions, and I expressed them to the best of my ability, and I felt very proud and liberated in having said that. And it created a huge rift among the people who were reading, and it created conflict, and it created so much destruction around it that I had to reevaluate and then decide, who am I? Am I the person who uses my talents in order to divide others, or am I the person who uses my talents in order to inspire people to be better and to bring everybody together? And a lot of my poetry that I write, I still have my strong opinions, but I don't post it anymore. I don't publish it because it would create this negativity. Have you found the same? I know you're an activist, so you probably do a lot more of it than I do.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, I think you can get away with like deeply political pieces if there is a personal experience that you can tie to it. That's what I found. I mean, it's which has taken me years to find that balance. Um, but it's almost like telling one on yourself, like, right? So I'm about to release a new piece called "Who Am I?" Either tomorrow. I think we're gonna release it, drop it tomorrow. And and in the piece, it's it references race relations in America today, but from a personal level, like I don't have to look very far. I can look right in my own family, just kind of the contradictions of the fact that there's black and brown in my family, indigenous all over my family, and yet like racism exists throughout my throughout my family. Um, and so to be able to use that as a reference point instead of looking just at the outside and I guess play, playing it just to the people that I know are going to receive it well. I think that there's something about calling it out within my own life or where it exists that lets the viewer at least have a moment where they can look at it and they can reflect. When you see someone else reflecting, it can be an impulse to look back upon your own, even for a moment. You might not continue to do it, but if you witness it, you might do it for a moment, and that's all I need, just a moment. So, but yeah, political pieces can be challenging. I find that they hit harder when there is a personal tale attached to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know you're also a boxer, and what was interesting to me is how, when I look at boxing, I'm not a boxer. I'm a martial arts enthusiast. But when I look into combat and I look into boxing, there are a lot of similarities between boxing and acting, because when you are focusing on somebody that's in front of you, and you're paying attention to everything that they're doing in order to properly counter it, there is a lot of acting and reacting that's happening, and that is has a lot of parallels into what you're doing in a scene, or what you should be doing in a scene, of your existing in this environment where you're paying very close attention and you're affected by what the other person is doing. And I'm wondering, again, when I was reading about you being a boxer, I wonder if you utilized some of your skills in the ring into acting into a scene.
Well, so first of I love to box. I love just the art form of it. There is a science behind it. Because I'm not by any means proclaiming that I'm like this gifted, fighter, right? But I do box like 5 times, 4 or 5 times a week, and what I've learned is that um, you know listening. You gotta listen. Don't anticipate. If you anticipate, you're gonna get hurt. Um, and just when you think you got something down, something else.
Yeah.
You gotta be relaxed enough to receive something unexpected and be able to respond. And there are a lot of similarities when it comes to acting and boxing that I found along the way, and a lot of it translates. Like I've had so many moments where I'll be training and I'll be like, yeah, this is literally like my trainer will say something that Elizabeth may have said, or another teacher that I respect have said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So, and it's like a scene. A good scene will have two people playing, going back and forth, and there'll be an unpredictability of the scene.
Yeah.
So that way, I feel like it.
The more we talk about it, the more I think that we need to start adding boxing to a curriculum in all of the acting schools, because it can really teach people a lot about being in a scene. So acting schools, if you're watching this, please add boxing. At least do a workshop on it, because it makes perfect sense to me and Goya. And again, kind of because enough time has passed and you had a chance to kind of deal with what happened before, and to use all of those experiences to become a much more well-rounded and intuitive human being. When the opportunity for Get Shorty came up, and you knew that it's a big time opportunity, and you're going to be with Chris O'Dowd, you're going to be with Ray Romano, you're going to be in this even the name of the channel it certainly doesn't help, because it's epics. So anything just elevating the expectations. But when that came about, I wonder if your training, what you knew of yourself as a person, as an actor, as a boxer, all of that came to say, you know what, I'm ready for this challenge, no matter how big kind of it seems as an acting one.
Well, I think first off, I was at a point where, even before I got the audition, I was at a point where I was considering trying to make something of a career.
Mm-hmm.
I was just extremely disenchanted with how few auditions I got, and the ones that I did get, I never felt like I was the type they were looking for. So I always felt I was trying to impress a casting director versus like actually trying to go in there and do my thing. And so there is this moment that I've heard, and it makes a lot more sense in retrospect. Like they call it the. Can I curse on this?
Yes, please.
It's called the fuck it period,
Yeah.
right? So like it's when you stop caring about landing the job. You stop caring about giving the casting director what they're looking for, giving the director what they're looking for. You stop caring about all those things. And that's exactly what happened. I went in there. Um, I was already tired with the fact that I had two part-time jobs and I was hustling like weed oil on the side. But it still wasn't making enough money
Yeah.
to pay my bill, pay my stuff, and I was tired and angry and sad and just vulnerable and hungry. Um, and all those things played a factor. And I went in there and I did what I wanted to do. It literally did exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't care what I thought maybe they were trying to say with the character. I just did my thing. And I knocked it out the park. And then I got my callback audition, knocked that one out the park. And then they said that I may have to do a screen test, and then they said, forget it, we don't want you to do a screen test. We're just going to offer you the role, which was like a
Okay.
huge compliment.
Yeah.
Next part was when I got the job. Now I have to deal with the fact that like, oh yeah, you know, Crystal Dowd and Ray Romano, I'm about to like share the screen with these people, and initially I did. It was intimidating at first.
Yeah.
It was intimidating, and then but the beautiful thing that I learned from Elizabeth is ritual, like the importance of ritual, because ritual allows you to enter into any space with consciousness. There's a huge difference between habit and ritual, right? Like habit, we do without consciousness, we don't think about it. But ritual is an intention that you set out and you create the space for it. So that's what I would do. I create this ritual. I would relax, drop in to everything that ritual entails. And so by the end of the ritual, when I showed up on set, I knew that I belonged there. And that's all I needed. I just needed to know that I belonged there. That, yeah, like Chris and Ray, they're these great artists who hold their place. Um, but I was also there because I deserved to be there. And because of that, I was able to do my thing.
Yeah. Not only did you do your thing, but your character was supposed to be done in the first season, and they loved it so much that they rewrote to make sure that you continue on in the show. So that's another great compliment and a testament to your work. um, yeah, I really really appreciate that. The question that I have back to your audition is that you're in your fuck it stage, you go and you do the audition, everything goes great, then you get the callback. Does it revert back to oh shit, or are you still able to be in that I don't care, I'm just gonna do it?
Oh, I mean, again, ritual, right? So I have a ritual to like relaxation is everything. Relaxation isn't just about, you know,
Yeah.
you got to practice relaxation before you get the job. It has to be part of your process. So
Yeah.
yeah, I get nervous. I'll deal with all actually, I remember when I showed up, first of all, I do all the work that I need to do on the side. So when I'm there, I don't have to look at the sides. Right? So the whole time I'm there, it's all about relaxation. But yeah, I would get all there were times where like these thoughts would slip in where I thought I wasn't good enough, or like these other people look like they're like the part more than I do. And so instead of me being the victim of my thoughts, I made it everybody else's fault in the room that those thoughts were happening. And so then I started getting upset at them and having like this attitude towards them in my own space. I wouldn't disrespect them, but like I would just use it to my advantage so that by the time I was in the room, I thought I was better than everybody. I thought, and it worked for what I was doing. And yeah.
It was perfect because you had to bark out orders, and you're pretty high within the organization, so it actually made a lot of sense. So it was good. Using it was the right choice. I like it. Um, if you had a chance to go back and talk to your younger self, and give one piece of advice from now your vantage point at this point in your life, what would that be?
That I don't know. That it's all that it's gonna work out. You don't have to be so angry.
Mm.
You know, that, that who you are was always meant to shine. So that's probably what I would say.
It's great advice. Well, Goya, thank you so much for coming on. Maybe in the future we'll make some more time and have additional conversations because I want to talk to you and I have a lot more questions to ask you. But it's been a pleasure. And just in this conversation alone, you saw me. I've been taking down notes of things that I'm going to start applying into my life. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, boss. I'm happy I took the time. Yeah, we'll link up another time for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We know you love acting as much as we do, and that's why we do this for you. Thank you.